Is going on, everybody? Welcome to the First Round Fantasy Podcast. That is not Gabe joining me here tonight. That is my good buddy, Gio Ramos. I'm your host tonight, Jacob Bartley, and this is First Round Fantasy. This is our weekly show where we bring you our advice, but it is second round advice, meaning it's not the best out there, but we're going to do our best to bring it to you. Gio, I need to ask you two questions. How is my connection? Is there any issues?
No issues. Your video is a little bit grainy, but I mean, I can hear you and I can see you. I can
Awesome.
see you
Okay.
nodding. Yeah, you're
My
good.
internet says like one bar, but let me just.
Star Drew. Jacob, you black, dude. Yeah, soul power. What's up, Star Drew? Guys, we are just doing this as we go. You know what the deal is now. Technical difficulties here. Well, let's
There we
see.
go. Okay.
I don't know what you did, but it looks better now.
Okay. So my hardwire cord, the little clips that hold it in broke off. So that's kind of why it's having trouble.
Uh-oh. Gotta have that internet, buddy.
Is it still messed up?
No, you're good. Keep talking. Say something.
Awesome. All right. No, it's looking better. It's looking better. All right. Yes. First round fantasy. You're home for second round advice. See what happens when you don't show up, Gabe. This is what happens. We're gonna talk a little bit about what to kind of do here. The last couple of weeks leading up to a playoff hunt. There's people in a lot of different situations. You might be just outside the playoffs, maybe near the cusp, or you might be sitting at the top of the standings. There's different strategies for all different types of fantasy football records. And of course, we are going to do our Dark Horse and Fool's Gold segment a little bit different this week since we do have a guest on the show today. And then we're just going to take some of these live questions here. Gio, since it's been a while since you've been on, I think you came on an episode earlier this year for us. How is your fantasy season going, man, in general? Like, you don't got to tell us records if you don't want, but just how's it been going for you, man?
It's been going pretty good. And in 2 leagues, I'm at the top 2. I'm in 4 leagues. So I'm doing pretty good. I'm about middle to upper ranking. A lot of it was just drafting really well and honestly just getting lucky. Like finding Saquon Barkley in the end of the second, third round. Picking up Damian Pierce and selling high and just being a believer in Tua in all the leagues that I'm in. Like it's ride or die. So
hey, that worked out, man. I mean, so far.
Yeah, the last episode I was on, First on Fantasy, I had a bold prediction that Trey Lance was going to be a top 5 QB. That Sunday he got injured and was done for the season, and that's the last time I was on this channel.
Wow. So it was
Yeah.
all your fault.
Nah, man.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, good call on Tua. I'll be honest. I was a Tua doubter. I said to you and Joseph many times, and our buddy Joseph, he's a big Tua fan and believer as well. I just didn't I didn't think he was bad. I thought he was going to be like a top 15 quarterback in the league, but not a top 8 quarterback in the league. And he's kind of proven me wrong. It looks good. Obviously a lot has to do with Mike McDaniel and
agreed, yeah,
and the pass catchers he has, but you could say the same about every quarterback. Patrick Mahomes had Andy Reid right away, and he had Kelsey and Hill right away. So like you can say the same thing about him even. So yeah, he's looking really good, man, and supporting those. I think Waddle and Hill still both top 5?
I believe
wide
so.
receivers.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
Let me take
I
a
should
look.
know that question, but
I'll take a look.
But they Yeah, go ahead for us here. I know they were at one point recently. Um, yeah, so let's get into this. Talking about kind of going in for the playoff hunt now. Like I said, there's different ways to approach this. You can be sitting 9-1 right now, and go like you're probably going to lock up a bye week if your league has bye week. And if that's the case, just sit, do what you keep doing what you've been doing, make sure you have some nice depth going in. Make sure you're not just like rocking with like three running backs, because if one of them goes down, you can be in a dire situation. Do you have any tips for those people sitting at the top of the standings?
Well, if you're sitting at up top, I would say, keep focused. Don't get lazy. Okay, don't like turn on cruise control or autopilot or something and think you're just gonna glide because it's still a long season to go. They added one more game to the regular season, so that adds on top of everyone's traditional fantasy leagues. So it would now would be the time to like start, building some depth, behind your players. If you don't have handcuffs, like let's say you're a Dalvin Cook owner and you don't have Alexander Madison, go get him. Okay, give up
Yeah, that's a
whatever.
good
Okay,
point.
if you have well, I guess if you have Tony Pollard now, maybe try and get Zeke. I was gonna say if you have Zeke, try to get
That's a
Tony
good point.
Pollard, but
Hey,
like flip it
that's
around.
crazy.
Yeah. So look for your depth, look for your handcuffs and whatnot. And this is I think by now, if you're at the top, you should be going into the trade deadline, not filling your bench with experimental players who might pop off or not, just look for those handcuffs.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I mean, obviously, I'm conscious of that. I'm very pro handcuff. I try to get my handcuffs in the drafts. I don't reach for them extremely, but I really try to get my priority handcuffs, I should say. Not every handcuff is worth stashing. I
Right.
used to think that, and I'm kind of, changed my beliefs a little bit. Like if it's a random guy we never heard of, most likely they're probably not going to do anything. The team's probably going to bring in somebody else if their star gets hurt. But if it was like a Tony Pollard situation or Alexander Madison, there's those are some moves to make for sure. You want to make sure you have those guys. There's a few other ones out there too. Just those premier handcuffs, you got to have them. And that's a great advice for people that are sitting at the top of the standings, because I think a lot of people just say, "Nope, I'm good. Like I'm gonna win," and
Right.
they kind of just ride it out. But I think that's some good advice there. What about somebody who is like either maybe they're the seventh or eighth seed and they're trying to get into the playoffs, and maybe they're a game or two out?
Well, my whole thing with that, okay, let's say you're somebody who's like in the bottom third or bottom quarter of your league, depending on the size of your league. You want to build a team to where just get me in. Okay, let's say it's a 10-man league, right? Just get me the 6 seed. I'm not building a championship team at this point. I might build a team that's to be reckoned with, that can go off at any point. So I'm looking for players with high ceiling. I mean, you are where you are because, injuries, or maybe you drafted horribly, or maybe you made a dumb trade, but if I'm in the lower, I'm looking at my pieces and I'm looking at, okay, I have a blue chip player. Can I trade him for a player that's a tier below, but also get somebody with a high ceiling? What's an example? Okay, Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor just popped off. You're probably not trading Jonathan Taylor, but maybe you're in a position where you don't have to. He just had a monster week. I'm looking for somebody who's in the upper half of my league and looking at their depth. And I'm letting them know, hey, look, you get Jonathan Taylor, you're pretty much guaranteed a championship. Okay. But if I give you this player, I'm going to need this and this. And do not sell yourself or sell Jonathan Taylor short. Okay. Because the person who you might be selling it to, or a Jonathan Taylor type player, might be trying to say, "Oh no, you need my players more than I need Jonathan." Well, that's true, but I'm looking at number two, and how confident do you feel about his team and whatnot? Do you want a set it and forget it player? So, yeah, if you're on the bottom, it's time to start maybe unloading. Okay, again, it all depends on your team and the bye weeks, and who your matchups are. Look at your matchups. Whether you're Yahoo sleeper or whatnot, go to matchup and go week by week. Obviously, you can't account for injuries or whatnot, but maybe you have some players who are banged up, and it's just like, okay, at this point, I'm contending for a sixth or fifth seed, and I want to build a team that's to be reckoned with. Somebody who you don't want to see in the first round. So,
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And I think, well, first of all, I think this is a given. Like, don't if you're not mathematically eliminated, don't give up. Keep
yeah,
trying until you're mathematically eliminated because you never know. We've seen it plenty of times. Team starts 1-6 and they just go on a winning streak and they make the playoffs and they possibly could win still. As long as you get in, you have a chance to win. So don't
sure.
assume, oh, like I'm not going to try because I'm the ninth seed. I'm only one game out, but I'm the ninth seed and my team's not that good. So I can't, there's no way I can beat the one seed. Of course you can. Fantasy football is a lot like real football, where in the sense that any given Sunday, meaning anybody can beat anybody in fantasy football. All it
Yeah,
takes is a couple players to blow up on your team and a couple guys to, drop the ball on their team. So don't ever give up. And also, you got to look at it like if you have to win out to get in, or you have to go 3-1 to get in, look at your bye weeks for the next couple weeks. Can you afford those weeks where your players are on
right.
bye weeks? Maybe trade those players for players that already had their bye. So that way you got a fully loaded lineup every week because you have to win every matchup most likely. And you don't want to risk it. So I'm not saying like trade if Jonathan Taylor, I think he already had his bye week, right? Or did they? No, they have their bye week 14, which is crazy. Um, for example, Jonathan Taylor, like don't sell him for cheap. And like, let's say you do have to win week 14, maybe trade him for another running back of equivalent value, but that other person you're trading to has to have they want Jonathan Taylor for some reason. So just things like that. Like don't ruin your team for it, but definitely consider those type of moves, I would say.
Yeah,
All right,
100%.
Gio. So we were
Yeah.
talking about. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was saying I was just gonna kind of jump to this last part of this is trade targets. I mean, you kind of talked about targeting handcuffs, but
Yeah.
what are some guys that you think people can get for relatively cheap right now for this last playoff push here and for the playoffs?
Well, if you're talking about running backs, I'm looking for running backs who are still a part of committee, but are clearly on the rise. Like a popular one and somebody who I have in multiple leagues is Rashad White. Rashad White from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Leonard Fournette is still relevant, right? He's still relevant in this backfield, but the popular consensus among many fantasy football analysts or pundits is that Rashad White is going to take over that backfield. The weather's getting colder. There's one more game in the regular season, and if you look at the Bucks, first half of the season, they sure did run Leonard Fournette an awful lot, and it was to the point where Tom Brady was, not looking like Tom Brady. Granted, he had some things going on the outside, but I'm looking at that backfield and I'm going, boy, Rashad White, this might be one of your last chances to get somebody like him. Look who has him, package a trade, and see if it's possible to get him. Another one that I'm looking at, and it's just I don't know how much you can really try to buy low on this player, but I'm looking at David Montgomery from the Chicago Bears. Okay, they just put Khalil Herbert on IR. We know the Chicago Bears offense over the past 2 weeks has been just insane, and it's just me now. Hey, how about that? But like, I'm looking at buying low on David Montgomery. Okay, at least in redraft leagues. Okay, and if the person who's holding him is not sure or whatnot, remind them of Justin Fields and how crazy Justin Fields has been just on the ground running and whatnot. And, remind them that that's still very much a committee. Now, obviously, I'm trying to, persuade this person into letting go of David Montgomery because I still think he's going to get his. But you want to look at those type of players. I think someone like Christian Watson, who was somebody just asked about in the chat. By the way, I would start Christian Watson over Rondale Moore this week, 100%. But Christian Watson is somebody who people might be looking at to sell high on because they're just not convinced. And if somebody's trying to sell Christian Watson, by all means, go get him. I've seen it happen where somebody pops off for 1 week, and it's like, oh, finally, this person's been sitting on my bench, and I could use some other players. Give him Raheem Mostert. Go for Raheem Mostert. People thought he was gonna fall off a cliff this past week. No, he's still very much relevant. He might be the 1B, but we just talked about that Miami Dolphins offense led by Mike McDaniel, and I think as long as Raheem Mostert's healthy, that's a big thing. I think he's somebody who you could probably get. So yeah. You there? Blink twice. All right. Well, I guess I am taking over. So, yeah, trade deadline is approaching. Guys, throw it out if you have any people who you might want to trade for and whatnot, and I'll send you some ideas. If you're the Cooper Cup owner, sell him right now. Okay, like, do you really want to, whether you're in the playoff hunt or you're at the bottom of the barrel? Do you really want to hang on to that, given how the Los Angeles Rams are playing right now? No, you don't. At least in my opinion. Sell them right now on the sell people on the possibility that Cooper Cup may very well return. Okay, so if I'm the owner of Cooper Cup, I'm looking to get a wide receiver 2 and maybe a running back 2. I know that's kind of lowballing it a little bit, but you're gonna have those trade partners who don't buy in all the way on Cooper Cup, and that's fine. The idea is to not get a I mean, you would love a home run, but get the best offer out there. So if you're a Cooper Cup owner, sell him right now. And yeah, that's all I gotta say. Jacob, are you back?
I believe so. I'm having some internet issues, of course, the day that Gabe's not here, but thank you for carrying us, Gio, through that whole entire segment. I really appreciate it. We're gonna try to make this work for the rest of the show. If the internet gets really bad, we're just gonna call it for the night. But let's just see if we can get through this. But thank you for carrying us through that trade segment. I agree with everything you said, man. All right, so let's get into. So we normally do our dark horses and fool's gold, but while we were coming up with it, we kind of had 3 players that we wanted to talk about, and we don't have to take a strong stance either way. But I just want to get mine and Gio's opinion on all 3 of these players, as far as if they're startable this week, or would you consider benching them and looking elsewhere? So let's go ahead and start first with Kadarius Toney, who he's kind of been a hot topic lately because, he was traded to the Kansas City Chiefs, and it could have went multiple different ways. He could just be, another guy that's a part of the ensemble of wide receivers that Patrick Mahomes is going to split it among, or what I believe is that he's going to emerge as the best wide receiver on the team. And some people have strong opinions for that or against it. And I just want to talk about this week, Kadarius Toney. They play the Los Angeles Chargers coming up here on Sunday night. And look, a lot of the Chiefs wide receivers are questionable. So that has to play into context here. McCole Hardman could miss the game. Juju Smith-Schuster could miss the game. So obviously that plays in Kadarius Toney's favor heavily. But if you had to decide right now, go ahead, Gio.
No. Gabe in the chat said, Gio wave if you see this.
Oh, nice. If you have to decide right now on who you're going to start, or if you're going to start Kadarius Toney, I don't think he's a must start, but I do think he's a solid start here. And I think what a lot of people do is they look at the projections on their fantasy apps, and a lot of people decide who they're going to start based on that. And he's not projected high in a lot of leagues. Like on Yahoo, it's like 8.9 fantasy points.
That's
on
fine.
Sleeper, it's
That's
even
fine.
less. And I'm like, good, project him low, because look, he didn't have a crazy game last week, and he didn't have a ton of targets even after Juju went out. I understand that, but I think this comes down to talent. Patrick Mahomes is, if he's not the best quarterback in the league, he's the second best, and there's no question about it to me. And Kadarius Toney is more talented than every wide receiver on that team, including Juju Smith-Schuster. And obviously he's not better than Kelsey, but that's a totally different position and story. So I think regardless, even if those players play, I think one of McCole Hardman or Juju is going to miss. So that opens up some opportunities for Kadarius Toney. I think for me, I'm starting him in almost every league I have him in this week. Somehow, some way, I got him off the waiver wire this morning in one of our leagues, but he should have never been there in the first place. But yes, so Gio, I'm saying Kadarius Toney is a start this week. Do you agree?
100%. Start Kadarius Toney. I don't care. Put him in your flex, whatever makes you feel more comfortable. And I do not care about his projections. I think the Chiefs stole Kadarius Toney from the New York Giants, and regardless of his projections, is Patrick Mahomes. Okay, Yahoo cannot project what type of crazy backyard football nonsense Patrick Mahomes is going to pull off against that Los Angeles Chargers pass rush. But I'm not concerned with it at all. Start him with confidence and keep riding.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's on the rise. I was telling Gabe last week that I wish I would have chose him as my must start last week, because I had a very strong feeling about him. Instead, I chose Khalil Herbert, and we all saw what happened there. So Kadarius Toney, you heard it here first, or not first, but you heard it here from Gio and I. He is a start this week here, coming up here. Okay, so another player that we want to look at. So this was a player that Gabe had his eye on as a start, and that is Gus Edwards of the Baltimore Ravens. And they play let me help pull it up here.
Carolina Panthers.
They play the Carolina Panthers this week. And the Baltimore backfield has been quite a mystery this year. Not a mystery, but they've had injuries. We thought J.K. Dobbins was coming back. J.K. Dobbins, that's the name we haven't heard in a while, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously he plays a little bit, and then he re-aggravates his injury, and then goes and he's on IR again. And we saw Kenyon Drake shine here. So we have Gus Edwards playing against Carolina this week. A very friendly matchup, I will say.
Yeah.
Very friendly matchup. For me, I'm a little worried because, I don't know what I'm going to get from Baltimore, as far as rushing goes. But I do think he's definitely a flex consideration. And I do like him talent-wise out of all of the guys. So depends on your team. You might have a lot of bye weeks this week, but I think Gus is a flex consideration. How are you feeling about it, Gio?
Yeah, I feel better starting Gus. If I had Gus Edwards, I would feel better starting him coming off the bye week and going up against a defense like the Carolina Panthers, who let's say it's very much a possibility that the Ravens are up by multiple scores, and then all of a sudden it becomes a running game, and you know it- I know Lamar Jackson, is somebody to worry about too. Those mobile quarterbacks and how they could easily steal a
Exactly.
touchdown or something like that. But against the Carolina Panthers, I don't think that would be much of a problem. And the Ravens, if they want to make a playoff push, they probably may not want to run Lamar Jackson as much. Okay, let the running backs, take some of the work off. So I'm fine starting Gus Edwards as your RB2 or flex.
Absolutely. And how, like Gio said when we were talking about before the show, he said, if Gus Edwards is your RB1, you're in trouble. But if you're starting him as a flex, then I think that's okay. So this was Gabe's choice as a start of the week. So we'll go ahead and add Gabe's thoughts here. So So basically saying Carolina sucks, 116 yards per game, tied for 6th in rushing touchdowns with 12 against Carolina defense.
Hmm.
Okay. He also says Baltimore has no receiving game. Very true. And Mark Andrews is probably going to miss this game again, too. So you got to think
Yeah.
they're probably going to run a lot. And they're probably going to
Hmm.
be up and they're going to use Gus Edwards. But every time we think that's the case, it's not always the case, but we'll see. And Gabe also says last time Edwards came back from injury, he was not eased in. 16 carries for 88 yards and a touchdown. Very great point, Gabe. I wanted to share your points because obviously this is the player that you wanted to talk about. So look, I'm not as confident in this start as I am Kadarius Toney, but I do feel good about Gus, and especially after reading those numbers from Gabe, yeah, I think he's definitely a strong flex consideration. Now, let's move on here, Gio. So being that our podcast is on Wednesday, we um we passed the waiver period by the time we do our podcast. So we started
Yeah.
doing a segment called Waiver Wire Wins and Woes, just to talk about the waiver wire because I know people just went through it. And then also sometimes there's some gems just sitting there on the waiver wire that nobody picked up. So do you have any players in mind, or how did your waiver wire go this week? Did you get the guy that you wanted? Did you miss out on somebody that you really wanted?
So in most leagues, I wasn't too active on the waiver, aside from a kicker. But in the dynasty league that we're in, the franchise dynasty, I had to find a lot of waiver wire players, and I thought I did pretty good. The Rams wide receiver Ben Skowronek, probably pronounced that name wrong. He was a popular ad,
Hey,
and
he's startable.
I mean, there's a lot of targets that Cooper Cup is leaving on the field, and they all can't go to Van Jefferson or whoever. So he would be somebody that I am happy that I got. Another one was Kendall Hinton, the wide receiver from the Denver Broncos. Okay, we don't know what's going to happen with Jerry Judy. It's his injury, which on Sunday looked very, very nasty. Just the way he was holding the back of his ankle, but since then, his injury has improved to now day by day. I still think he's going to miss this week. And I'm happy if I picked up Kendall Hinton, especially on a bye week where you have no Tyler Lockett, no DK Metcalf, no Mike Evans, no Chris Godwin. Who else is not? No Christian Kirk or Zay Jones or Tyreek or, Waddle. So, I feel pretty good about these pickups here. And yeah, again, these are players that I'm looking for spot starts. I may not have a Jamar Chase, I may not have a Jalen Waddle or Rashad White, or Kenneth Walker or something like that. I'm looking for players I could just throw on my flex. Players who could benefit from injuries, whether it be short term, a week, like I think Jerry Judy, or long term, like the running back, the backup running back in Chicago. I forget his name, but I have him in 2 leagues. Um, God, what's his name? Oh, Treston Ebner, who right now is projected in sleeper for about just under 3 points. No, I think he'll easily double that. And anybody who does that, on my spot star for a week, a heavy bye week, that's fine by me. So
Yeah, definitely, man. I think the waiver wire is like one of the most fun things about fantasy. Like I actually really look forward to Tuesday. I guess Tuesday nights, Wednesday mornings. Like I just spend like an hour like going through all my teams, seeing what waiver wire pickups I can make. This week was a light waiver wire week for me. A lot of my teams are set. And so I'm just either picking up kickers or defenses because I have bye weeks and stuff. You know what's funny? I never really had this situation. So I'm rostering 2 kickers in some leagues because I don't want to drop. I believe his name's Jason Sanders, the Seahawks kicker.
yeah,
He's been the most consistent kicker all year that I've noticed. Maybe I don't look at other guys that are already rostered, like a Justin Tucker or something like that.
right.
But Sanders has been so solid for me, and like I don't want to drop him, so I've kind of felt myself in that situation. But like I said earlier, I think here's what's to be learned from this situation. This morning, I'm checking. I go every morning and I look at who didn't get picked up, and I go through like the wide receivers, the running backs, and all of
Yeah,
a sudden I see Kadarius Toney sitting there. I'm like, oh my goodness! Boom, add, and I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Awesome. So if you're out there and waiver wires go through, go check every morning to see who didn't get picked up. Sometimes guys or people will put in 2 waiver requests. They get their first guy and they don't pick up the second guy because they only had 1 extra roster spot. So
yeah,
always go check the next morning to see who's just sitting there and who you can get for free without using a waiver priority or fab or your fab budget. So
yeah,
I think that's a good point. I do think Nico Collins is somebody that might still be out there that people can look at. Brandon Cooks, who knows what's going on with him? He's mad that he didn't get traded. That's what it
right.
is. And
He ain't
so,
been the same. Well, even before that, but
exactly,
still.
he's mad that he didn't get traded. So I think Nico Collins could have a really, really nice end of year because who else do they got? Who else do they have? Um, and I do think another player that people should be looking at, it kind of ties into that handcuff situation we were talking about earlier, is Samaje Perine.
Hmm.
Look, I don't want to, put an injury possibility out there into the universe, but if something were to ever happen to Joe Mixon, Samaje Perine would get a ton of work. And if you look at his efficiency numbers compared to Mixon, he's actually been better. He just gets a lot less touches.
Yeah,
So Samaje Perine, even if you don't roster Samaje Perine, if you need some running back depth, and running back depth also means players that you necessarily can't use right now, but you might be able to use in the future. And that Samaje Perine, I definitely think is one of those guys because there's not a lot of players you can name where if the starter goes down, they're instantly maybe not an RB1, but a solid RB2. And I think Samaje Perine is one of those guys. So I would take a
yeah.
look for your waiver wire for some of those guys, especially if you roster Joe Mixon. All right, so let's head to the chat here and answer a few questions. We got Legacy. Hello, Legacy. Thank you for joining us. And they asked, do I trade away Chase, Kamara, and Amon-Ra for CMC, Higgins, and Evans? Dang, that's a big trade. So
Whew.
Chase, who's injured but could be back soon, Kamara, Amon-Ra, CMC. Yeah, I would do that, honestly. Because look,
Yeah,
you're getting Chase is injured, which we don't know when he's coming back, if he comes back at all, and are they going to ease him back in? We know Higgins is healthy; he's good to go. He's still going to ball out even when Chase comes back. I'd much rather have CMC than Kamara, and then Evans and Amon-Ra. Like Amon-Ra is really good, but it's not that big of a difference as far as fantasy production goes. Recently, I mean, I just think, and it's not because I'm a 49ers fan. I just think CMC is going to go nuclear the rest of the season, even though Elijah Mitchell's getting a lot of touches. So CMC puts it over the top for me. I mean, if Chase is fully healthy, I wouldn't do it. But the fact that Chase is injured, yeah. What do you think, Gio?
Well, legacy. I mean, what's your record right now? Where are you
It's a good
sitting?
point.
You know,
That's
are you at the top? Are you fighting for a playoff spot? You know, can you afford to wait for Jamar Chase? I think in any sense though, I'd rather have CMC over Kamara. Higgins, I mean, you're still getting what, a 1B as far as, wide
yeah.
receivers. Chase is 1A, Higgins is 1B. And I know Mike Evans has, kind of been on a touchdown drought. Not kind of, he has been on a touchdown drought, but that's not going to go on for much longer. And, he's kind of Brady's, chucking in the air and Mike Evans will catch it. I would go and trade for CMC, Higgins, and Evans. But again, I don't. I mean, what's your record? Where's your standing in your league? So
Yeah, if you got a playoff spot locked, I mean, I guess not a lot of people do unless you're a 9-1. But if you're looking like you're gonna make the playoffs, maybe think about it. But if you're trying to make the playoffs or you're like competing, one of our leagues, I think it's beers. Like a lot of people are. There's like 8 teams that are in it still, and if you need to secure those wins, I would take the CMC Higgins Evans side for sure.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's go down here to Travis Unlimited. Thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for the question.
Unlimited.
So they got a couple this or that for us, basically. So Burrow against Pittsburgh or Fields against Atlanta. Let's start with that one. Man, that is a tough decision, but I could definitely see a lot of people probably have a usable quarterback and Justin Fields because Justin Fields was on waiver wires for so many weeks. Burrow or Fields? Where are you going with that one?
So Burrow would be the safe choice. Justin Fields would be the fun choice.
Mm-hmm.
And we play fantasy football to have fun. So start Justin Fields.
There we go.
Grab a beer and see what happens.
I like
Ride the
that
hot
answer.
hand.
That's a good answer. Like, because you're right, fantasy is fun. And I have Dak and Field. Oh wait, is Dak on a bye week? No, they're not on a bye week, are they?
I don't think so. No.
Oh, they were last week.
Yeah.
Oh no, they weren't. I'm tripping. They were 2 weeks ago. Anyways, I have Dak and Fields, and I'm starting Fields just because, like, how do you sit him? And especially they're playing Atlanta. They're playing Atlanta, and look, even it's crazy to think, like, who you would start Justin Fields probably over everyone except Mahomes and Allen. I mean, that's it. So, yeah, and Tua if you're Gio or Joe. Yeah, I would go Fields, man. You have to. It's great. Look, this could come back to bite us all, right? Fields could have 15 and Burrow has 30. It could happen, but there's no way you bench Fields right now. You just can't. You just can't do it.
I think Joe Burrow is good for like 30, but like Fields can easily go for like 40 plus.
Exactly, and he's been doing it.
Again, who's on bye on your team, Travis? Like, you have any players on bye? Can you afford to? Do you have to throw the Hail Mary and start Fields and whatnot and see what he does, and maybe he wins you another week, and you're just like, oh my god, I can't believe it! Like he did it, yeah, haha. Like imagine that feeling, man.
You know what sucks though? I just realized this. Justin Fields has a week 14 bye. I know that's not the fantasy playoffs anymore, but that's basically a playoff match. If you have a lot of people are going to win and get in on week 14, and we're not going to have Justin Fields. That sucks. Yeah. I was going to suggest they trade Burrow, but now knowing that Justin Fields has the week 14 bye, I wouldn't trade him. And the Bengals already had their bye week, so you don't have to worry about that. So hold on. And especially quarterback, this year has been so shaky for quarterback. Like it's been hard. If you're not like a top 8 guy, you're a bottom 22 guy. So it's been really hard. All right. Second question from Travis Unlimited. Gabe Davis against Cleveland or Josh Palmer against Kansas City. Now, this obviously, I don't think Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are going to play this week.
Right.
They're questionable. They both are. I think Mike Williams said maybe. I'm assuming Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are out. If that's the case, I'm going Josh Palmer. Gio, do you agree?
Yeah, I like Josh Palmer in the shootout situation. It's a divisional primetime game. And, I think the last time I saw Justin Herbert in prime time was when he was just making those ridiculous throws and he had like cracked ribs or something. And he's going to want to show out against this, Chiefs team. It's a divisional game. And, I think he's going to be a little bit more focused during this matchup. And yeah, I'd be willing to take a shot on Joshua Palmer. I mean, far more upside than Gabe Davis, in my
Absolutely.
opinion.
He's the
Yeah.
clear number one while
Yeah.
these other two guys are out. And
Right.
Gabe Davis is always a boomer bust player. Like, I know he had a 21-point game last week, which was awesome, but Gabe Davis is always boomer bust. So I would go with the more consistent number one target for Justin Herbert. Yeah. And that is Josh Palmer. I mean, I know Eckler's his number one target technically, but you know what I mean, wide receiver wise.
Yeah. And by the way, Travis, if this is a redraft league, trade Fields. Get somebody, especially with that bye week. Get you a, I don't know. Shit, who are some players? Go get a Cortland Sutton. Go get see if you could and add a player and go get CD Lamb or something.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are scared to trade Fields right now because they think he's going to just put up 45 for the rest of the year. But you got to think,
I don't think
you're
so.
not going to have him in week 14. So again, if you're in the playoffs and you got a bye week, whatever, just hold him because you can use him in the playoffs. But that's a good point. Maybe consider trading Justin Fields. And I don't think we would say that if it wasn't for the week 14 bye week. Like
Sure.
that's the thing that puts it over the top. Because you're gonna have Burrow no matter what. So definitely look at that. Gio, before we get out of here, do you have any start sit questions like that you're pondering in some of your leagues or anything like that?
See, it's tough because most of my a lot of my teams are on bye.
Oh, so you're
They
just
just
throwing in whoever you have left, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, so would you start Dalton Schultz, who's kind of been on a rise against Minnesota, who ranks number 10th against tight ends, Dalton Schultz? Or would you go back to David Njoku and him against the Bills? But we remember how David Njoku was, balling before his injury. Who would you take?
That's a tough one. Hey, if Deshaun Watson was back this week, I would go Njoku. Man, that is. I know you have Njoku in almost every league. You know
Yeah.
what? Njoku has been the better player this year. I would probably rock with Njoku. Where were you at prior to this? Like who's in your lineup?
I have Dalton Schultz. I just
Yeah,
I go with
Dallas plays
I go with him.
Minnesota. Dallas plays Minnesota. Yeah, I mean it's not. I don't think you can go wrong either way. To be honest, I mean I think the Cowboys are going to pass a lot more, and it's going
Yeah,
to be a more highly high scoring offense. So yeah, it's probably your best bet to go with him for sure. Tight ends are always tricky for start sits for sure.
I agree. Would you
Um,
start? Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead, because I'm still looking for some. Go ahead.
Okay. Would you start Debo Samuel against the Arizona Cardinals or Cortland Sutton without Jerry Judy against
Wow.
divisional matchup the Raiders, who are probably
So
pissed off right now?
I know this, but maybe the viewers don't. You must have a very stacked team if that's a decision you're making. And I'm guessing this is your pick six team. Um, that's tough, man. Because we talked about this recently, Gio, you and I. Debo's ceiling is now very limited with CMC in
Shaky.
town.
Yeah.
And he hasn't even done anything close. He had one great game, and that was against the Rams. And you and I were watching that together when he had that amazing touchdown run.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a run or a pass, but either way, he caught the ball and ran. But that is so tough, man, because how do you bench Debo?
You don't.
Like,
I
yeah,
mean, but if you had to choose, let's say you're
honestly,
stacked at wide receivers, you got shit running backs. Like,
Judy is, or no, excuse me, Sutton is always good when Judy's not playing.
yeah.
So that's a tough situation. But honestly, like, not because I'm biased, I just think Debo's a way better player. So I would go Debo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I
Like,
mean, I think
yeah.
Debo again, like all he needs is one short pass, and we've seen the guy run and take off for 40 yards, and just like so difficult to tackle, and it's just I don't think I could ever sit Debo Samuel because it's just like one, I'm too invested, but two, it's like we know what he's capable of, okay? And if the 49ers fall behind, they're throwing it, and I think Debo's going to remind everyone why he was paid such a big contract.
Yeah. I hope so.
Yeah.
Just because I want to see him do well. And I do have him in one league
Oh, I'm
that I
not
needed
worried.
to.
I'm not
Yeah.
worried at all. Like I know it was just last week was kind of an ugly win for the 49ers. I mean, the game should not have been that close. They were coming off their bye, so maybe they're a little bit rusty. First time Jimmy G has had all these weapons at once. Kittle, McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, um, Elijah Mitchell. So it's
It's
like
nice to be a Niners fan.
yeah, yeah. I just man, I really wish Trey Lance was healthy right now. Just my own separate opinion, but
Yeah, that would be awesome. How could they stop us? All right, so I have one, and I got to kind of put my money where my mouth is here because it involves Kadarius Toney. So
oh boy,
the player I'm putting him up against is Michael Carter. Now, look, in Week 9, Michael Carter, who I think is very underrated. He's a player I talked about trading for before Week 9 that I think's gonna have a good rest of season because we know Brees Hall's out for the year. But in Week 9, he had 12 carries for 76 yards and a touchdown. He had one catch for 10 yards, but we know he's a very capable pass catcher. He had a
right.
bye week last week. Plays New England this week, which is not going to be an easy matchup by any means. So do you start Michael Carter or Kadarius Toney in your flex?
I'm gonna go Kadarius Toney.
More
I would,
upside?
I would much rather be in an offense ran by Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes than on a Jets team going against Bill Belichick in New England.
Good point.
And I just again, I really think Justin Herbert's gonna ball out. Primetime divisional game, like I said, and Mahomes is gonna be right there with him. I think this is gonna be a high scoring game. And when it comes to fantasy, you want to go for the games that you think are gonna be high scoring. Herbert, Mahomes, primetime, divisional game. Yeah, give me Kadarius Toney.
Yeah, I think in general, I agree with you. Before this conversation, I have Michael Carter in my lineup, but I set this lineup like Monday morning, and I haven't looked at it since. But I'm thinking I'm gonna go with Toney because it's just way more upside, and I have to win in that league. I basically have to go at least 3-1 to get into the playoffs. So if that's the case, like this is exactly what we talked about. I have to win, I'm going for the home run with Kadarius Toney. If I was the number 1 seed, I might just play it safe and leave Michael Carter in my lineup, honestly, to guarantee myself 10 to 15 fantasy points. So, but yeah, I think in general, Kadarius Toney for sure. We do have a start sit question from Gabe here, and he says Cordero Patterson or Christian Watson in the flex. Now, I believe Cordell Patterson had a disappointing week this past week, but that was a Thursday night game. I'm trying to look up matchups here. If you can pull up those matchups for us, Gio, that would be great. But here's my worry: is like I almost went with Christian Watson as my fool's gold this week because I thought Gabe was going to be on the show. So I thought I was going to have an interesting conversation because he's very high on Christian Watson. And I just think I always thought Christian Watson was very talented. Even when Packers drafted him, I liked him for dynasty as a dynasty prospect. But how can you not say that 4 catches for 3 touchdowns is a fluke? It is, but his talent is not a fluke. So I do think he's gonna be good, but I wouldn't even count on him as like a wide receiver 2. Definitely a flex consideration. Cordell Patterson, he's had his ups and downs. He's been injured this year. Did you get those matchups, Gio?
Yeah, Cordell Patterson versus the Bears and Watson versus Tennessee.
Okay.
I like Watson versus Tennessee.
Yeah. I mean, it's not neither are bad matchups, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Cordell Patterson, to be honest. Like maybe that's because I never, since this resurgence last year, like where it was a crazy RB1 last year and all that, I never rostered him. So maybe there's a little bit of bias playing in there. But I do like the upside of Watson. You just got to be careful. I don't think he's not going to have another 3 touchdown game. If he does, awesome. But it's not going to happen. But hopefully, I'm just worried about the Packers. Like what happened to Romeo Doubs? I know he's injured. He got injured, but like we all thought he was going to be this breakout rookie. He just, disappeared kind of, and he wasn't playing that well before he got injured. So
yeah,
it's definitely. Gabe said he's answering his own question. I'm leaning Watson. 10 definitely give up the deep ball. Oh, Tennessee definitely gives up the deep ball. Yeah. So yeah, I don't blame you guys for going Watson, but you got to remember Atlanta run, and they have Cordell Patterson, and he's also a very capable receiver. He was a wide receiver before he moved to being a running back there. Yeah, so that should do it for this week, unless we get any last minute questions. Sorry for the Wi-Fi issues, internet issues here. Not our best episode, but Gio came here to save the day, swooping in like Superman himself to come help us out. Gio, thank you for joining us, man. Why don't you say bye to the viewers, and if you want to plug anything you got going on?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Jacob. Thanks for having me, people in the chat. Again, take a look at your roster. Okay. Like gazelle intensity. Okay. Don't get too comfortable. If you're riding high, don't put on autopilot or cruise control and just, slack off or whatnot. Keep looking for where you can make trades. Okay. And, solidify that roster. Okay. Strengthen that bench, get those handcuffs, and, you'll find the same success I've had. So you guys can find me on Twitter at Insider Geo, and of course I'm with Jacob on Apocalypse Movies, talking movies every Tuesday. And last word, if you haven't done so already, and if he's still on the waivers, go get Odell Beckham. Let go of that player that you've been holding out on. Maybe they're going to pop off this week or next week. Stop looking at the chats, okay, and Yahoo and whatnot and what they're saying. Let go of that player and go get Odell. You'll thank me later.
Yeah, I saw a league that I dropped Odell in. Gio picked him up real quick. By the way, the Sleeper app, I love the Sleeper app because you can react to people's roster moves. I think that's so funny. Yes, thank you, Gio. Well said. And I will tell you guys, watching this man right here, he's probably won the most. We've been playing fantasy football for 9 years. He's won the most out of anybody that we played with in that span. I've only won twice, and not even the leagues that I won my dynasty league the first year. And then we used to have an Apocalypse League. I won that the third year. That's it. But there's other leagues that we play in that are much more competitive. Never won them. I've come very close. I played you in the championship twice or once?
We played once that I can remember.
Once in the championship. I lost to you in pick 6 as well. But anyways, this man knows what he's talking about. A lot of fantasy experience and a lot of hardware, meaning championships. So he knows what he's talking about. Me, not so much, but I try. I I get to the championship a lot and lose. That's my problem. And I lose to you and your brother.
You're a perennial contender every year, bud.
Perennial contender. I like that. That's what I am. But yes, you can find me on Twitter for fantasy football at Jacob FRF Sports. And if you want to hear my thoughts on movies, TV, anything like that, you can find me at Jacob Barley 824. Like Gio said, we do a movie podcast called Apocalypse Movies. If you're into movies, go check it out. And also don't forget to follow Gabe on Twitter at Gabe FRF Sports and us on Twitter, First Round Fantasy on all social media. Find us, the audio podcast, on any audio platform that you listen to. Thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate it. Yep, there you go. Apocalypse Movies right there. That gives me time to bring up the outro. And don't forget, this Sunday we'll probably be doing another Sunday morning tailgate, and we should have Gabe back for that. So we'll see you guys then.